My name is Troy Daniels. I'm one of the technical trainers here at SimpliPhi Power. Today, we're going to be doing our SimpliPhi IQ Installer Training Battery 101. This is really a Phi Battery 101. It goes over SimpliPhi as a company, what our products are, some kind of basic overview stuff, even some financial considerations, and really kind of dives deep into that. If you're looking for something more advanced, definitely check out some of our other trainings you can find on our training calendar. That's simpliphipower.com. Go to our training calendar. You'll find a full list there of upcoming trainings. You can also go to our YouTube channel where we list tons of different trainings pre-recorded. So feel free to always check out those. If you do need NABCEP credits, CEUs for this course, at the very end, I'll have an email address that you can send some information to. So I will follow up on that towards the end. All right. With that, let's jump right in. All right, I'm going to start a little bit regarding the company overview and the company history. So really what we do here at SimpliPhi is look at how to provide safe, proven, and simple technology. Safe, as is non-toxic, non-hazardous, cobalt-free chemistry. This means that there's no risk of thermal runaway and fire, and no need for this really heavy fire propagation. Really, what that means is, there are other situations where maybe certain chemistries make sense, but we're talking about home storage often, and residential use and things like that really require a safe battery. And we perform that through non-toxic, again, non-hazardous cobalt-free chemistry. Our batteries are UL certified. That's 1642 on the cell level, 1973 on the battery level, 9540 on the system level, and 9540A testing validation. UN dot certified 9480 98.3. And for those folks in California, we are also SGIP approved. So if you are in California, that could be a big incentive. Also, as far as our practices, as far as where we gather our materials, as we don't use cobalt, we avoid some not so pleasant practices that other companies might receive their cobalt from, which involve a lot of child labor and some not so humanitarian practices. We're proven technology, over a decade of experience and growth, deployed in over 40 countries, over 100 megawatt hours installed worldwide. We've been tested and validated by the US Army and Marine Corps. And even business model demonstrates social impact and profitability can coexist. We even have special permission by the FAA to fly our batteries. And we are manufactured in the United States, right in California. Simple technology. We integrate and optimize with really any generation source. And we try to maximize resiliency and energy security, and create savings through utility bills with time of use, peak shaving, demand charges, various things like that, as well as just energy security. So I've added this slide in, maybe, there. If you take any of my other trainings, you might have not seen this slide previously. I believe Matt Walker created this one. What I think it's good to talk about is we just touched on those UL standards. To look more, a little bit more in depth again, we are UL certified. Most of the certifications for batteries are around fire and disaster safety. So looking at 1642, 1973, and 9540, these are the three applicable certifications that you're going to look for, and most inspectors are going to look for. Now, 9540A is a separate test protocol, not an actual certification. This does have to do with fire safety. I just did a little speech on this recently. So I check out our YouTube channel. I've got more information regarding our 9540A testing. It's really important. It's going to become more and more important here. So we do stick with our UL standards and continue to make sure we're up on our UL standards as things change. All right. So just looking at what UL certification is needed for inspection. Again, that's the biggest one, I think. Certain requirements per jurisdiction and at each level, and oftentimes they're interpreted a little differently, so having those codes makes a lot of sense. It's really always recommended to have UL listed. If you find products that are not UL listed, I would probably say I would recommend against using them. Not just for the simple fact of the safety, but also insurance purposes, and more importantly, the AHJs not actually passing these batteries. So UL standards, or really any U listing that satisfies that need, super important. All right, so I mentioned cobalt-free chemistry. Well, we use lithium iron phosphate. So again, not like these cobalt-based chemistries. This is a lithium iron phosphate lithium battery. Does not have the chance for thermal runaway, non-toxic, technically landfill safe, though I would not recommend doing that. No ventilation requirements, which is a huge, so no ventilation, no cooling requirements, at least as far as the temperature range goes. Again, I'm going to plug another training here, but just did a whole training about temperature and talking about low end, high end, tons of other environmental considerations. So check that out if you have a chance. Goes into this kind of stuff about the cooling and ventilation requirements, but it's a huge gain when it comes to batteries, being able to put them in tight spaces without that ventilation and without some of these safety monitoring equipment and cooling equipments. They're redundant systems that can fail. So we don't have that. So again, lithium iron phosphates, the chemistry is kind of the base of everything we do. If you're a little more interested in the kind of the granularity, cylindrical form factor is what we use to house that lithium iron phosphate. Put those together into a battery like this one here, our PHI, standard PHI 3.8. And that's kind of the building block of various products and even expanded systems that we can create. All right, warranty is a bit interesting. So this is kind of changed a little. So warranty has changed. At one point, we were warranting a bit more based on, hey, this is your depth of discharge. This is how much we warranty based on that depth of discharge. While we still maybe want to say, hey, 80% depth of discharge, so how much you're actually using of that battery is going to make the battery last a lot longer than 100% depth of discharge on a daily use. It is still a 10-year warranty, regardless of 80 or 100%. So it's unlimited cycles, 10-year warranty. That's kind of the most simple way to put the warranty at this point. End of life, EOL, you're going to see this in a ton of warranties. This is referring to, let's say, at that 10-year mark, how much of the battery's original lifespan we expect to see. We say EOL at 80%. So 80% of the battery's original capacity remaining at that point. All right. I also wanted to mention, I saw a Q&A come through. I did want to mention, I forgot to say earlier, if you have any questions throughout the presentation, go ahead and type them right into that Q&A bar. If you go up to your control, that little control bar, you'll see Q&A. Go ahead and type any questions in there. I see questions already. I knew this question was going to come up. So Mark, I will address that at the end. We'll go through all the questions, but yes, you were the first to pull the trigger on that one. And we'll address that and we'll talk about that. Some exciting stuff happening. Okay, back to the presentation. Temperature. So again, I've got this great presentation I just did regarding temperature and everything that we're doing with temperature. Operating temperature is -4 degrees Fahrenheit to 140 degrees Fahrenheit. This really has to do with discharge and standby, but not necessarily charging. Charging temperature is a bit more important, as most batteries need to charge in the same environment that they're operating in. 32 degrees Fahrenheit to 120 degrees Fahrenheit, or 0 C to 49 C. This is the charging temperature. This is where we want to stick within. I can go on for hours and hours about temperature, charging, but again, I just did a presentation called Environmental Considerations. It's up on our YouTube channel. We talk a lot about, if you are working in temperatures that are maybe lower, how we can utilize things like heating pads, insulation, understanding the temperature gradient between the inside and the outside of the battery, as well as looking at our AmpliPHI, our newest battery that actually has temperature control hooked up to the battery management system. So I won't harp on it too much, but again, if you are working maybe in one of these extremes, maybe the low end here or the high end, check out that presentation. It goes over temperature, humidity, elevation, and even the testing protocols that go into those things. Okay, battery-wise, BMS, the battery management system. So the BMS, actually, we have two different types of BMS at this point. Well, three technically. We have our simple, our Phi battery. This is our standard Phi battery. This battery has an internal battery management system, meaning it does not communicate with inverters and chargers outside of it. It simply does just, oh, excuse me here, let me make sure. It looks like my screen's acting a little funny. If there's any problems with screen share, just let me know, but it seems to be working still. I'm just getting a little error message here. Our standard Phi battery has an internal battery management system, meaning it does not connect to other batteries, it does not connect to inverter, it does not connect to chargers. It really does some very basic functions. Really, cell balancing is its main function, meaning we can parallel a bunch of these batteries and the internal battery management system kind of takes care of that balancing act. It does do some level of overcurrent, short circuit, charge and discharge protection, but it is not to be relied upon for those things. If you push the battery too much, you will harm the battery. So if you, and we'll talk about sizing later, if you size way incorrectly, the battery management system is not going to be able to protect over and over and make sure that the battery does not get damaged. So keep that in mind when it comes to this stuff. Now, I'll talk about it a little bit, but we also have our AmpliPHI battery now, which is our more advanced battery. This has comms built into it. That battery does have a more advanced battery management system, a digital BMS. That is a bit more advanced, has some more functionality to it regarding auto-populating set points and protection, and even sizing, some stuff related to sizing. And the last battery management system, again, we'll talk about this coming up here in a few slides, is the high voltage stuff that we do. So our C&I projects, our commercial projects, we have a separate battery management system that is actually external and is a stack controller. Okay, before we get into all that, let's talk about some more key features. C/2 rating, what does that mean for us here at SimpliPhi? Well, C rating really is referring to, a C rate is a measure of the rate at which a battery is discharged relative to its maximum capacity. So we can look at C rating as, hey, this is the rating at which the battery gets its amp hour rating. So, our 3.8 kilowatt hour battery has a rating of 3.8 kilowatt hours, or 75 amp hours. Again, that's the rating. We rate that at C/2. For comparison, like lead acids oftentimes might be rated at C/10, C/20. And what it means for us as far as charge and discharge goes is that we can actually charge or discharge. So let's say our 3.8 kilowatts, the best example here, we can charge or discharge 1.9 kilowatts continuous at a time. And when you add more batteries, that number continues to go up. So we have that ability. Where does that really come in handy for me is solar. And looking at, whether it's off grid, whether it's grid tied, we can charge this battery in a 2-hour window and, pump a lot of amps in there really fast. That's a huge advantage when it comes to maybe short windows of time where you need to really charge up the battery quickly. Our batteries are scalable and expandable. So scalability wise, we really have no limit as far as these 48 volt, 24 volts, and even really the 12 volts go. There is not really a limit as far as how many you can parallel as far as our Phi batteries go. Now the AmpliPHI is changing. I believe it's, I'm going to get the number wrong, but I believe it's up to 70 batteries now that can be in parallel. But our standard Phi battery, which again, we're going to talk about products here coming up, our Phi battery has no limit. I mean, here you see, 80 batteries, 300 kilowatt hours, a huge system. So it definitely, we can use these small building blocks to build up the system that we need or the system that we want. Easy to expand. This means we can actually go into an old system and put new batteries in place. It's a huge feature that you do not see with a lot of companies. We actually have the ability to add on to a system existing. Now, I get a lot of questions about how long should I, how long can I wait before doing that? I would say try not to do it past 3 to 5 years. I think that's a bit pushing it because you're going to see a lot of imbalances. But it's also important to note that putting new batteries into an old system, the warranty is always going to revert to the oldest battery in the system. So if you do expand later, just keep that in mind. The beauty of expansion is if maybe we're installing an off-grid home, maybe we just sized a little bit incorrectly, that's okay. We can go back and add to it. Or maybe loads are growing. We have the ability again to go ahead and add to that system. Our batteries are self-contained and stable. They do not off-gas. They do not need ventilation. They don't really need a lot of work over time. You're not watering them or checking specific gravity or anything like that. And they have an extremely low self-discharge rate, 1% per month. This means they can stand idle very well. So, if the SOC is really high and the power goes out, your power is there because it's been staying there idle. It's not like a lead acid battery. You think your car battery, where it just sits there and it loses over time, loses a lot of power or a lot of stored up energy, excuse me. It doesn't have that problem. We've got that very low self-discharge rate of less than 1% per month. My favorite kind of wrap up picture is I think a lot of the stuff we're talking about there was related to really comparing lead acid, especially when we talk about things like no maintenance, C rating. And this is a great example of what it might look like to replace a lead acid battery bank with SimpliPhi batteries. These batteries on the right are way old. These are like very early on generation of SimpliPhi batteries, but it's still cool to see this in an actual system where, this large bank was replaced with these 8 batteries. You can see it's cleaner. There's not a lot of there's no sulfation anymore. They don't need in a battery box with a vent fan. Just cleaner installation, cleaner wiring, non-toxic. And actually this one on the right has more power and more energy available than the left, even though it's a smaller bank. All right, let's keep moving on. All right, so let's talk a little bit about products and what we offer at SimpliPhi Power. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and full disclosure. I'm just about to switch over this picture probably after this presentation. This battery is now in a white enclosure. You'll see kind of what that looks like, but it is actually no longer in this black ABS case. It is in a white metal case. It has added maybe a couple pounds, not much though, believe it or not, and it's just stronger and can hold temperature better. So we have switched over to the metal cases, even on the standard Phi battery. So you're not going to see these black case batteries anymore. Don't fret if you have these batteries in the field and you're worried about expansion. The new white metal case still can be added to this. It just cannot be bussed with bus bars directly to the black ABS cases. Again, though, this is our standard Phi battery. This is our 3.8 kilowatt hour battery and 151 amp hours at 24 volts, 75 amp hours at 48 volts. So we do have the option 24 or 48. You are not going to put these in series ever. If you want 48 volt batteries, you get 48 volts and you parallel them. If you want 24 volts, again, same thing. We don't put two 24 volts in series and get a 48 volt with these. They are modular and scalable, as I mentioned. These are great for drop-in lead acid replacements. They're really easy. They're really simple. They don't require that communication. They work with pretty much any inverter that you might be using with the lead acid. Always, we can talk about that later. And I see a question around that, but we can always look into different older inverters. But for the most part, they mostly do work with even older inverters. I mentioned they have an integrated battery management system, but again, this is an internal BMS. It just is internal. It does not have that comms capability. It also comes with an integrated circuit breaker for protection, but more than that, that breaker on the top that you see there makes installation a lot easier, as you can actually make the leads not live anymore, which is great when you're installing batteries. All right. Sorry, I keep checking questions as I go along, just making sure. But we will get to those all at the end, I promise. So keep them coming. Happy to answer more and more. All right, we do have some smaller product lines. This comes in, actually, it says 12 volt, but it really comes in 12 and 24 volts. This is our 1.4 kilowatt hour battery. It's scalable, small and lightweight at about 33 pounds. It's great for mobile applications. It's really small and light, and we can get it in those tight spaces. It does have this Anderson connector. It can either come with bare wire or Anderson connectors. Now, these do make a lot of sense, though, in a lot of cases with mobile applications that are in tight spaces, I think, because you don't have exposed terminals. And if you're in a really tight space, you might not have the luxury of having a really isolated battery and it's too close to you to have those exposed terminals. It does have an integrated battery management system similar to the Phi battery. And it's very similar as far as compatibility with our standard charge controllers and inverters that we typically pair with. We do offer these as well, these power kits. They're basically inverter charger. You can even get a little solar panel, folding solar panels with them, the big Jenny and the little Jenny. These are for things like emergency power, portable power. These are pretty easily purchased. I think even maybe Amazon, you can get them. Still utilizes lithium iron phosphate though. So we still are using that same chemistry, that safe, reliable chemistry. Okay, I won't spend too much time on the Express, but just know that we do have this. It's basically a mobile, it's a NEMA 3R mobile power and energy unit where, we have the batteries, the inverter, the charger, even some quick connects. Like here's a quick connect for a solar panel or a solar array, I should say, that can go through the charge controller. The big thing with this unit here is you'll see it actually has outlets. So it actually has an AC inlet for charging straight from the grid, an AC outlet, so you can pull power directly from this unit without having to hardwire it into a panel. It even has 2 USB ports. So this thing can be great as far as if you have, projects where you don't want to hardwire into panels, or maybe you need to bring large amounts of energy on site. I mean, we're talking 2 3.8 kilowatt hour batteries in one of these. That's a lot of power for such a small unit. Again, it's NEMA 3R rated, so it's outdoor ready. You can charge it up off site, bring it on site, or even I've seen people in apartments charge these up, big apartments, they charge them up, then they start plugging loads in if the power goes out. Our more popular ESS system is our access unit. I'm not going to talk a lot about it right now because we actually have a whole little section at the end where we're going to go over the access unit, but just know this is also plug and play, NEMA 3R rated, DC or AC couple. And again, we're going to talk about the different variations of our access unit, but this is our main seller as far as energy storage systems. And a lot of this has to do with, we talked about 9540 listings. If you're looking for a 9540 listed product of ours, our access unit is definitely the easiest go-to. We do have some other products that are listed, like our batteries with a certain inverter. Those are also listed typically, but this is the easiest product to get that 9540 listing. Okay, high voltage we do offer as well. This is really for things like microgrids and large scale backup, maybe something that has a 40 volt 3-phase panel. Again, external battery management system. It's actually a stack controller that controls the unit. These are very customizable. Between 200 and 1100 volts DC nominal is the stacking. That's the nominal stack voltage we can create anywhere in between. And then from there, we can parallel out those stacks to build up energy. We actually offer containerized solutions like you see here. We can work with a number of inverters. You'll see the Dynapower there in that picture. That's definitely one we've worked with a lot with these. The BMS is actually CAN bus, Modbus, and Ethernet ready right out of the gate. So it does have that high level communications that typically are required on these big projects. It also has its own monitoring system built into the battery management system with different faults and self-clearing faults versus non-self-clearing faults and triggers and alarms. If you are interested in our high voltage CNI stuff, feel free to comment, ask me, reach out to me when you see my email at the end, but really we will get you in touch with a sales application engineer. They work when it comes to these solutions. They're very customizable. Every project's a little unique. So if you have a high voltage project, I would recommend reaching out to us directly and we can help you out as far as system design and understanding various, what you might need or containerized solutions. And very last product I'm going to mention here, the AmpliPHI battery. This is the newest addition to our battery line. So you'll see here, this is actually in the white enclosure. This is that metal enclosure that the Phi comes in now, but you'll notice it does have these 3 ports. Talk about that in a second. It is still a 3.8 kilowatt hour battery, UL 1973 and a 9540 as well. It definitely tied into some of the other products. It actually does have a bit of a higher max discharge. So, when we go beyond, we have continuous charge, which we talked about, C/2. We also have max discharge, which is the rating at which the battery can discharge at 10 minutes. This battery can do 100 amps DC at 10 minutes. And every time you add another one, you're adding more availability as far as discharge goes. But again, that's only at 10-minute mark here. The standard 5 battery can do 80 amps, just FYI, for the 48-volt battery. This battery, I forgot to mention, only comes in 48-volt. It's not coming 24-volt. It is about the same size or same weight almost as the 5 battery, just a little bit heavier, but it's the same dimension, so it still works with existing wall brackets and existing energy storage cabinets. It does have flexible sizing, and I'm gonna skip over that, but just keep that phrase in mind because I'm gonna bring it up later on. The biggest difference with this battery is the battery management system has closed loop communication with inverters. So this is true closed loop communication. Currently, we have it working with the Solarc. That's the main one that we work with. We have some coming down the pipe very, very, very soon regarding some other inverters that it can actually communicate with. But when it communicates, we're talking about auto-populated set points, high level protection built in. You can actually do a smaller battery bank to inverter capability. And again, I'll talk about that coming up here. And it actually does high level accurate readings like state of charge, reads its own voltage, charge and discharge. All of this stuff is coming from the battery direct. So the battery is actually telling the inverter what its own state of charge is, where the voltage, where the, how many amps are coming in and out. So that's all actually done internally from the battery. So you get that really high level stuff when it's actually reading from the cells themselves. It is limited to 75 batteries. I know I believe I got that number wrong earlier when I said it, but there it is right there. So it is limited to 75 batteries in parallel. That just has to do with communication runs, but that's still a ton of energy, ton of power. So it has some very high level protections built in, like over voltage, overcharge and discharge, temperature. Again, I won't talk too much, but check out my training about temperature. We talk a lot about what the AmpliPHI can do temperature wise, but it does have the ability to disconnect when its temperature is too high or too low, and even turn down its own charge rate based on temperature. Charge and discharge. So again, we have this kind of I guess I'll jump ahead of myself a bit. We do have a minimum inverter to battery requirement. So if you have like an 8 kilowatt inverter, let's say, we require a minimum of 16 kilowatt hours of battery. This helps and ensures that we prevent over discharge, as most inverters do not have the ability to actually lower their discharge rate. So with the Phi battery, the sizing is kind of, you kind of need to follow that sizing guideline, or you're really gonna leave yourself open for some possible damage that's not covered under the warranty. With the AmpliPHI, if it's hooked up to that Solarc, it will tell the Solarc exactly how many batteries are in its bank, and it will make sure that it actually ramps down that discharge rate, and the battery itself ensures that no over discharge happens. So we don't need to follow that rule like we do with the Phi battery with the AmpliPHI. We could have 2 AmpliPHI batteries on a 12 kilowatt Solarc, and as long as it's hooked up correctly with the communications cables, it will communicate that it cannot overcharge or discharge beyond a certain point. I know it's kind of a lot to take in, and it's maybe a lot just for a single presentation, but I do have a lot of presentations on this as well. Okay, if you're looking for the AmpliPHI, and you want to pair it with the Solarc, tons of different options there. We can do our Access or ESS solution. Again, that's 9540, all-in-one outdoor rated. We have some other solutions like just simply you can do it yourself. If you want to buy a Solarc and buy AmpliPHI and connect them all together, that's totally fine as well. Definitely a bit more customizable. And we also offer our Boss 6 and Boss 12. This is battery only cabinet. So here's the Boss 6 here. These are NEMA 3R rated. You can get this with the Solarc as well, with the AmpliPHI batteries. And actually, a lot of our Boss combinations with Solarc are 9540 listed as well. All right. So I'm going to go a little bit into battery sizing now. Oh, sorry there, jumped ahead a little bit. And then we're going to go ahead and jump into a little bit of installation and kind of wrap up from there. I apologize. My internet is kind of running a little bit of error here. So if for any reason the presentation just stops abruptly, I really do apologize. I've had it happen once before, and I'm anticipating that it's not going to happen this time. But if it does, I greatly apologize. Let's talk about battery sizing. I mentioned depth of discharge and how it doesn't necessarily affect the warranty anymore. But I did mention that it can affect the longevity of the battery still beyond that warranty. So kind of some rough numbers is looking at 80% depth of discharge, you might be able to get up to 10,000 cycles, 90% up to 5,000, 100%, 3,500. These are not solid numbers. These are just, based on certain projections, but they're good ideas of, hey, maybe you have a certain application where you want the battery to last really long and be able to cycle a lot. That's where you can really start to base your depth of discharge, again, beyond the warranty, off of your mode of operation. So let's say you've got an off-grid system. That customer is going to want to charge and discharge on a daily basis. So to maximize that battery's lifespan beyond the warranty period, we likely want to stick with something like 80% depth of discharge. So we're using the battery, or using 80% of the battery's usable capacity. Maybe in a battery backup situation, like, hey, it's just for backup when the power goes out. My power does not go out very often. It might make more sense to go with something like 90 or 100% depth of discharge in that case. All right, I'm not going to harp on this too much because I just said it, but again, if we're using the standard 5 batteries should be sized to twice the inverter's output capability. So if it's an 8 kilowatt inverter like this one, we need minimum 16 kilowatt hours of battery. I can't stress that enough. I see people, oh, well, my customer's only going to, I know my customer's only going to use 4,000 watts of power continuous. They put 2 batteries on an 8,000 watt, radian here, and the customer starts adding loads when they're gone and they fry their battery and it's not covered. So please just follow that sizing. It's in all our installation manuals, all of our warranty, all of our integration guides. You'll see the math there. It's very straightforward. We don't have a maximum. You can put as many batteries as you want on this smaller inverter, but we do have a minimum. So keep that in mind. Charge controllers don't have a minimum as much because we can program those to limit the charge. So really, we just got to watch out for that inverter, making sure we're hitting that minimum number. Again, if you have the AmpliPHI battery with the Solar and it's communicating, we don't have that requirement. If you're looking for some sizing tools, we have a battery bank sizing estimator. This is just based on your kilowatt hour consumption number and days of autonomy. We've got a bit more of an in-depth sizing there with our system-based PHI calculator that goes into things like, hey, is it AC coupled? Is it DC coupled? What equipment do you have in the system? And then we also have our lead acid battery bank replacement calculator, which takes in a ton of factors. If you are replacing a lead acid battery bank for a customer, or maybe you are the customer, that's a great tool to use to get the number of batteries that's required to make up for that lead acid bank that you had originally. These are all on our website. They're all free, live. You can jump on there anytime, go under support, and you'll see a tools section where you can go to all these different tools. I don't have it mentioned in this slide, but levelized cost of energy is a sales tool we also use, looking at how to compare different batteries and the cost per kilowatt. You will also find that tool in this section. I'd say poke around if you're comparing some batteries or shopping, you have a customer shopping between 2 batteries, check out that tool as well. Okay, installation. We're going to go into like the most basic installation methods here. If you're looking for something a little bit more advanced, I would check out one of my other trainings or check out really a few trainings. We kind of can't jam everything into one when it comes to installation, as there's a lot. If you're looking for information on installation, manuals, spec sheets, integration guides, these can all be found under product documentation. My favorite's the integration guides. Those show, based on the specific inverter and charger you're hooking up with, exactly how to program that system. As far as shipping and receiving, this might be how your batteries come individually packaged as such. Check the battery for damage, check the breaker, make sure it's holding right. That's a good sign that there might have been a drop. Make sure it's the right battery with a multimeter, never a bad idea. Make sure you got the right voltage and everything. But just know that once it leaves our facility, we don't cover shipping damage. And the distributor might have their own clauses regarding shipping and shipping damage, but my rule of thumb has always been in life when it comes to receiving solar and battery equipment is if I think that there might be some damage, I will not sign off on it. There's, tip and tells, tell you if it went upside down, if it fell over, just be cautious. The biggest thing I always say is even if the box is damaged and the battery looks fine, I would still file a shipping claim, because once they leave and you find out something's wrong later, it's really hard to deal with. So always keep an eye out for that. All right, as far as mounting and clearance, we have no clearance requirements technically. So the batteries can actually sit flush up against each other. It does cause a little bit more heat, just keep that in mind, but we can have the batteries right up against each other. If you're mounting on the wall, we actually have these brackets here. These are our brackets that mount each battery individually. We have our BOSS, our battery only cabinets I already showed you. That's a great clean install where you can put it in that enclosure and put everything together nicely. You can use your own stuff too. I mean, there's tons of options, battery boxes. I've seen people just use shelving units. Honestly, we're not very picky when it comes to where you're putting the batteries or how you're mounting them, as long as it can handle that weight. And as far as orientation, if you're mounting the batteries, they can sit like this, they can sit on them sides, they just can't sit with the leads facing upside down. That puts a little too much pressure on the batteries over time and can cause some damage, but you can put them on their sides just fine. As far as wiring goes, this is the kind of easiest wiring tech. This is a bit different, you might see, than what other companies might call for. If you're looking at like a lead acid, it's probably post to post up to a common connection point. Same thing with the negative. That's not going to be the case with our batteries. We want same length, same size cables, all going to a common bus bar or connection point. This helps distribute the power evenly, make sure we hit that same efficiency, and we don't have charge and discharge imbalances. You, of course, can use things like combiner boxes, power panels, DC, just basic DC buses to do that connection. I've even seen, some inverters can handle that connection of a couple batteries. For bigger systems, typically we're going to use battery combiner boxes like this one, or you could always do terminal bus bars that go across each terminal, and then you just have a single cable going up to the connection of the inverter or the charger. We have a full wiring guide on our website. If you want to kind of dive a little bit deeper into wiring, there's a ton of information in there regarding terminal bus bars, regarding wiring, regarding, if you do have different lengths, how to use them properly and things like that. As far as DC coupling versus AC coupling goes, the battery's not too concerned there. So this is just a diagram of some, here's some DC optimizers going through a rapid shutdown into the inverter, and maybe you have, all your batteries connected this way. But again, whether it's DC or whether it's AC, you kind of see the batteries kind of lie in the same way. This probably should have a combiner. This picture is a little funky. I would recommend there'd probably most likely be a combiner right here going up to this inverter. But as far as AC coupling, again, not that much different from DC coupling. As far as the batteries are concerned, they just sit on the DC side of the inverter and the chargers. Okay, if you're torquing the batteries, connecting the cables, please use a proper torque wrench. 160 inch-pounds, 13.3 foot-pounds. Over torquing the battery can cause damage. So I hate to remind everybody, but I always say this, please check to make sure that your torque wrench is calibrated or recalibrated before you go ahead and start using it on batteries. Can't tell you how many people I see use impact drivers and things like that on the terminals and snap them right off. It's always the same game too. It's I don't know how it possibly happened, and then we get it back and we see big marks where the impact driver had pulled the whole piece off. As far as programming goes, we've got some really handy guides I talked about that go over things like, hey, should it be 2-stage? Should it be 3-stage? What's the absorb? What's the float? What's the low battery cutout? What's the max charge rate? What's the more advanced functions like cell and generator triggers? That can all be found in our integration guide. So this is actually an integration guide here for Schneider. You can see it takes specific set points, like Schneider asks for what's the bulk voltage, and it says 56 volts. Absorb 56, float 54. And it goes through each setting for both charge controllers and inverters. We've got a ton of these integration guides for Outback, for Schneider, for Victron, for Solarc, for SMA, tons and tons of these. And we are always happy to look at new ones if you're using an inverter very often. They take the specific language of that inverter and charger company, and they tell you exactly what the settings should be. So I really recommend peeking around our integration guides page. It is the best way to program our batteries. Now, I want to mention if you're using the AmpliPHI battery with the Solarc, you do not need to do a lot of programming, as the BMS does the programming for you when it connects to the Solarc. All right, let's go into the access fairly quickly here, and then we're going to wrap up with some stuff about financing with our batteries and our IQ program. So our access unit, I mentioned, this is pre-wired, AC or DC. It comes with inverter, chargers, the batteries. It's all put into the NEMA 3R enclosure. We have two big options when it comes to the access. This is the Schneider version, comes with the XW Pro. You can add an MPPT. You can see the charge controller right here. That is an additional add-on you can add if you want to go DC coupled. If you buy it straight out, like it just is, you will get the AC coupled version. So that is just the Schneider XW Pro without the charge controller. As far as monitoring goes, we just use the Schneider platform. This is actually the web box, I want to say now, not the com box, but same basic insight too. You can see here where it's kind of real-time data, but also shows you that historical data. So if a customer wants to get this on their phone or tablet or whatever, they can see all their devices running. So we just utilize that same platform when we are using our ESS solutions like the Schneider Access. We also have the Solarc Access. This is a 12 kilowatt Solarc inverter. This comes AC or DC coupled because the MPPT charge controller is built into this unit. So no matter how you order this unit, you will have the ability to go DC or AC coupled. It does some really cool functions, like you can even do self-consumption and time of use AC coupled, which the other inverters don't have that capability. And it even has some really cool rapid shutdown features, like it's basically ready for a button, one kind of stop shop button to initialize all rapid shutdown, which is becoming more and more common where we're going to need that battery level shutdown as well. You can also buy the Solarc Access unit with the AmpliPHI batteries. So you can purchase it with the AmpliPHI with that high level comms that can do some really high level SOC, state of charge readings, and different accuracies there. Platform for monitoring, very similar here. We're just talking about, real-time historical data. The big difference between the Solarc and the Schneider is it's a lot easier to do remote programming with the Solarc versus the Schneider Access. Okay, again, AC or DC coupled options when it comes to the access. If we're looking at a Schneider Access, where everything's kind of in this box here. It's important to note that all of our access units have that automatic transfer switch built in. So as long as you hook it up to a sub panel and you have a main and a sub panel, when the power goes out, the access will automatically disconnect and automatically reconnect. Can also supply generators on the same thing, same system. Though if you're AC coupled, please contact us if you want to add a generators. It's very complicated if you are retrofitting to go ahead and just add that generator in. But again, the automatic transfer switch is not an added on component for the most part if you have a sub panel. All right, I just want to make sure we have enough time for questions here. So I'm going to go through financing. I know it's a little play on words that I think Matt Walker came up with actually on that one as well. Financing our batteries. It's becoming important. We want to make sure that customers have the ability to buy these batteries when there's a high cost to any battery and solar system. We want to make sure that we fit into that financing as well. So we have a better ROI, but we have a higher upfront cost a lot of the time. So it's important that we be able to make these customers able to really, get as many batteries as they need and still offer, still be able to get financing. As far as our partners go on that, Mosaic Financing. So this is options for homeowners and installers. The Power Switch zero payments for 12 to 18 months. Power Switch Choice gives you the choice to take advantage of federal tax credits. An interesting note always, if you're putting in a brand new system, with batteries and solar at the same time. As long as the solar does enough charging, you can actually apply the ITC to your batteries as well as your solar. The Power Switch Plus for solar and or energy storage plus other home improvements at the same time. LoanPal, this is also one we offer. This one I hear is a little bit more popular amongst the installers. Options for homeowners, business, and installers. Easy to use POS app to compare different loan options. Contractors can actually use LoanPal to offer financing for solar storage and many others sustainable home improvements. So you can actually offer that as the contractor. It's a really good option. And Sunlight Financial integrates with your current sales and operation tools, instant credit approvals, no prepayment fees, flexible loan terms, allows contractors to offer financing on a widest variety of projects. So again, these are all financing that we offer. Our batteries I've gone through the process to be able to be offered through, again, Mosaic, LoanPal, and Sunlight Financial. All right, very last, IQ program. This is a battery 101, so I doubt a lot of people are installing our batteries already, but if you are, or you've even installed one of our batteries, get on this program. We're adding a ton of people every month now to this program. It's really starting to build. Basically, if you've installed our batteries, you can get part of this program. You got to do a very small application, it takes about 10 minutes, and you end up on our where to buy page. We include you in our newsletter, and we'll be even doing some interviews and sending out swag to various IQ installers. It is not a requirement to install our batteries to be IQ certified, but it is a huge, qualified, but it is a huge benefit to be IQ qualified, because you have a lot more visibility to customers that might be browsing our website, see that you've gone through this program, you've installed our batteries before, and you are trusted. So please, if you have already installed our batteries, even just one installation, go ahead and apply for the IQ program here. Just go to SimpliPhi Power, go to support, go to the IQ installer qualification program, scroll down. There's a very, very quick, about 10-minute application to fill out. And Matt Walker will likely get a hold of you and he will walk you through the program. All right. I'm going to open up the Q&A here. If you have any more questions, I see some questions in there, but if you have questions, now would be a good time to type them out. Also, NABCEP credits. Go ahead and go training@simpliphipower.com. Shoot an email over to that. Make sure your full name's in the email and say, hey, I need NABCEP credits. We'll get you the certificate for those CEUs. So again, email right there, training@simpliphipower.com. Make sure your full name is included. All right, first question. I knew this would most likely be the first question. What will things look like for SimpliPhi now that Briggs & Stratton acquired us? Yeah, we actually just released the news yesterday. We're really excited. Briggs & Stratton, check them out. Huge, big company, been around for 100 years. We're really excited about it. I don't have too much information to share at this time. We're just kind of breaching the surface, and this is all new even for me. But we're really excited to have, the ability to grow even more with a larger company behind us, to have more resources, to be integrated into more different types of components and resources, and really, we're really excited, and it's only going to mean good things coming down for our batteries, and for our manufacturing, frankly, is going to continue to grow here in the United States because of this. So we're really excited. But the batteries and all the technology is all going to stay the same, and just some really good stuff coming out of that. I'm sure that might come up again, but that's about as much information as I have right now. Just really excited. Where can we watch the webinar later? Check out the YouTube channel. There'll be a link when they send out the follow-up as well that has this specific recording to it. What inverters are compatible with the SimpliPhi batteries? Tons of different inverters. I won't name them all. We're pretty agnostic when it comes to that, but if it's part of our integration guide, check out our integration page. If it's part of our integration guides, then it's definitely compatible. So like Outback and Schneider and Victron and Magnum, Solarc, all those, you'll see those up there. If you're not sure, just check out our installation manual. And if an inverter can hit our set points properly, then it's really compatible. But if it cannot, then I would give us a call and we can tell you what's going on if that inverter is compatible. But for the most part, the big ones that you typically work with 48-volt batteries are compatible. Is the new case steel? If so, there are any rust resiliency resistance built into the coastal climate? Yeah, they are powder coated, so really it needs to be dented or things like that to actually rust. So it is resilient to rust because it is powder coated steel. Does the 12-volt smaller battery have a switch? It actually does not have a switch currently, so it does not have that breaker built into it. What products are used to monitor the SimpliPhi batteries? So it depends. Again, you know, if you're looking at our standard Phi batteries, you might be monitoring from the system itself. So maybe it's an ESS system and you're monitoring from something like the Schneider or the Solarc. Or you're looking at, if you want like a battery monitor suggestion, I always recommend the Victron BMV 700 or the 720, I believe. Sorry if I quoted that wrong. Those ones work really well with lithium batteries if you're looking for high level monitoring. And again, if you're using our AmpliPHI battery, it does its own monitoring that reports it to the inverter. Does the 3.8 kilowatt hour battery work as a UPS? The battery itself doesn't really have anything to do with the UPS supply. That's going to be more on the inverter. So check out, like Solarc, for instance, does have a UPS rating, I believe. So check out the inverter itself when you're looking at UPS. The battery doesn't necessarily really care as long as you're not pulling too much power too fast. Is it possible to import directly from California to other countries in order to skip the distributors? If, you know, unless you're willing to, you know, if you're maybe have a specific project, you can always contact us. But for the most part, if you're just installing systems, we typically recommend going through distributor. It's going to be cheaper than buying direct from us either way. But feel free to reach out to sales@simpliphipower.com if you need any more. Again, regarding the Briggs and Stratton stuff, yeah, really, I don't know as far as any changes as far as the name or anything like that, but as far as focus, we're really looking to, we are still operating fairly independently here and really just looking to grow our business through these resources. So we're just really excited. But, you know, chemistries and team value and everything are just aligned still and still moving. We're just having a little bit more resources, frankly, at this point to do more with the company. Any specific design for EV charging stations? Very broad question. I love it, but probably need to see the specific, you know, what you're looking at doing. But I have seen some projects go through with our batteries and EV charging stations. What happens if we have a project with a larger inverter, but they only want the battery for critical charges? Many times this is why customers want a smaller battery bank. Do you have to follow the 2x battery system size to the inverter size? Got to follow that guideline. I can't tell you how many times people say, well, my load is so small, they fry the battery. Just go with a smaller inverter. If you need some suggestions on small inverters that fit, you know, maybe you only need 1 or 2 batteries, we can help you out there. What are the advantages of DC coupled compared to AC coupled? Check out my DC versus AC coupled webinar. Actually, I do a whole entire hour-long presentation about the differences and the advantages of both. You'll know I tend to lean toward DC coupled, a little old school in that sense, but really they each have their own advantage as I see it. In the case of DC couple, is the power always supplied from the batteries? Will this have a bad impact on the batteries? No, again, check out that presentation where we talk about more about where the power is coming from. Even DC coupled, you're still able to provide power from the solar direct as well. So it really doesn't have a negative impact on the battery. But check that out on our YouTube channel. It's a really long presentation that goes over all of that stuff. All right, perfect on timing here. Thanks everyone so much. Again, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, just want to hear, you know, talk to us, reach out to training@simpliphipower.com. We're happy to help you out. You can always give us a call too. And we are happy to answer any technical questions, either with our sales application engineers or my team on the training side. I want to thank everybody again for joining and talk to you soon.